The massive conference room on Titan Station buzzed with quiet conversation as the Galactic Defense Academy's admissions board reviewed the final applications for the new training cycle. Admiral Cross sat at the head of the polished metal table, his 8-foot Vorthen frame making the reinforced chair look small. His thick gray hide bore the scars of countless battles, and his forearms moved with practiced efficiency as he sorted through digital files on his personal display. To his left sat Commander Lyra, a Malari, whose pale blue skin seemed to shimmer as she used her psychic abilities to scan each applicant's psychological profile. Her large, dark eyes could see into minds across star systems, making her invaluable for detecting hidden weaknesses or character flaws in potential cadets. On the Admiral's right, Director Zane adjusted his bio-neural interface, the Corvani's metallic implants glowing softly as he processed technical aptitude scores at superhuman speed. The three species represented the backbone of galactic defense. Vorthens provided raw physical power and tactical leadership. Malari brought psychic coordination and mental warfare capabilities. Corvani supplied advanced technology and strategic computing. Together, they had maintained peace across 12 star systems for over 3 centuries. The Altarian applications look promising this cycle, Commander Lyra said, her voice carrying the musical tone typical of her species. Their new genetic enhancement program has produced candidates with remarkable psychic potential. Director Zane nodded, his mechanical voice adding, "The technical scores from Rigel Prime exceed previous benchmarks. Their cybernetic integration training has advanced significantly." Admiral Cross grunted approval as he reviewed combat simulation results from various worlds. Each application represented years of preparation, rigorous testing, and survival of elimination rounds that typically reduced candidate pools by 90%. Only the strongest, fastest, and most intellectually superior beings in known space earned the right to apply to the Academy. The room's atmosphere shifted when Director Zane's expression changed to one of confusion. His bio-neural implants flickered rapidly as he processed an unexpected file. "Admiral, there appears to be an error in the system. I'm showing an application from Earth." Commander Lyra's psychic senses immediately focused on the file, her eyes widening in surprise. "It's legitimate. A human actually submitted a formal application." Admiral Cross leaned back in his chair, the metal groaning under his massive weight. He accessed the file and began reading aloud with growing amusement. Alex Reed, age 16, from New Geneva Colony. Height 5 feet 8 inches, weight 160 pounds. No genetic enhancements, no cybernetic implants, no psychic abilities. The Admiral's deep laughter filled the room. The boy lists his qualifications as martial arts training, wilderness survival experience, and academic excellence in tactical studies. His physical scores wouldn't qualify him for sanitation duty on a cargo hauler. Director Zane's calculations ran automatically as he analyzed the human's data. His reaction times are 60% slower than minimum Academy standards. His strength ratings are below the 10th percentile for all known species. According to our physiological database, humans have an average lifespan of barely 80 years. The psychological profile is equally amusing, Commander Lyra added, though her tone carried a hint of curiosity. Humans are classified as an emotional species, prone to irrational decision-making under stress. Their minds are chaotic compared to more evolved races, making them unsuitable for advanced military coordination. Admiral Cross stood and walked to the massive viewport overlooking Titan Station's training grounds. Below, current cadets from a dozen worlds practiced combat maneuvers. Towering Vorthens sparred with weapons that would crush human bones. Malari students engaged in complex psychic exercises that would overwhelm a human mind. Corvani trainees interfaced directly with advanced battle systems through neural links that would kill an unenhanced human brain. Humans, the Admiral mused, the soft species. They've been part of the galactic community for barely 50 years. And only because they stumbled across faster-than-light travel by accident. Their colony world struggled to maintain basic infrastructure without constant support. The other board members nodded in agreement. Earth's entrance into galactic society had been met with polite tolerance rather than respect. Humans were seen as well-meaning but fundamentally limited, suitable for basic labor and simple trade relationships, but hardly candidates for military service. "Sir," Director Zane said, "standard protocol requires rejection of obviously unqualified applicants. Shall I file the standard denial?" Admiral Cross turned back to the table, his scarred face showing the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in months. "No, I have a better idea." Commander Lyra's psychic senses picked up the shift in the Admiral's mood, detecting something that intrigued her. "What are you thinking?" "The long training cycles can become tedious," Admiral Cross explained, returning to his seat. "Our cadets could use some entertainment. Imagine their amusement when they see a human attempting to keep up with real warriors. It would be educational for them to observe the limitations of lesser species." Director Zane's implants processed the suggestion rapidly. "The human would be eliminated within the first week of physical training. His presence would serve no practical purpose." "Exactly," the Admiral replied. "But those few days would provide valuable lessons about the importance of proper genetic development and species advancement. Our cadets have never seen failure on such a fundamental level." Commander Lyra sensed deeper motivations in the Admiral's mind, but chose not to probe further without permission. The Academy has never admitted a member of a Category C species before. It would set an unusual precedent. "A harmless precedent?" Admiral Cross corrected. "The human will fail quickly and quietly. His departure will reinforce our standards while providing our real cadets with an amusing distraction. Consider it a practical demonstration of why the Academy maintains its strict admission requirements." The Admiral accessed his command terminal and began drafting the acceptance letter. "We'll assign him to basement quarters and basic equipment. When he inevitably washes out, we'll cite his brave attempt as evidence of human courage, however misguided." Director Zane's logical processes found the plan acceptable. "The failure statistics will be useful for updating our species classification databases. Human limitations under Academy stress conditions have never been formally documented. And psychically," Commander Lyra added, "it will be interesting to observe how a human mind processes overwhelming challenges. Their chaotic thought patterns might provide insights into primitive survival mechanisms." As the Admiral finalized the acceptance letter, none of the board members considered that they might be making a mistake. In their experience, natural superiority always prevailed over determination. Physical limitations couldn't be overcome by willpower alone. Advanced species had evolved beyond the crude survival instincts that still dominated human behavior. The letter was transmitted to Earth within the hour, carrying news that would change everything. Alex Reed, a 16-year-old human from a struggling colony world, had been accepted to the most elite military academy in known space. He would never know that his admission was intended as entertainment for his future classmates. Alex Reed stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately felt the weight of dozens of alien eyes watching him. The docking bay of Titan Station stretched out like a metallic cathedral, its ceiling disappearing into shadows above, while landing platforms accommodated vessels from across the galaxy. The air carried unfamiliar scents and the low hum of technology far beyond anything he'd experienced on New Geneva Colony. The other new cadets towered around him like living monuments. A group of Vorthan recruits stood nearby, their gray hides bearing ritual scars that marked them as warriors from birth. Each one possessed 4 powerful arms and stood at least 8 feet tall, making Alex feel like a child among giants. Their casual conversation involved lifting training weights that would crush human bones. To his left, a cluster of Malari cadets communicated without speaking, their pale blue faces serene as psychic thoughts flowed between them. Occasionally, one would glance at Alex with large dark eyes that seemed to see directly into his mind. When their telepathic conversation suddenly filled with soft laughter, Alex suspected he was the subject of their amusement. The Corvani group stood apart from the others, their bio-neural implants glowing as they interfaced directly with station systems. Metal plates covered portions of their skulls and spines, allowing them to process information at superhuman speeds. Alex watched in fascination as one of them downloaded the station's entire layout in seconds, something that would take him hours to memorize. "Attention, new cadets," a mechanical voice announced through the station's communication system. "Report to Orientation Bay 7 for equipment assignment and quarters allocation." Alex followed the crowd through corridors designed for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling felt uncomfortably high, while doorways seemed built for giants. Emergency stations, control panels, and even basic seating accommodated alien physiology, making him feel like an outsider in a world not meant for his species. The equipment assignment process highlighted every disadvantage Alex faced. Standard Academy armor came in sizes designed for Vorthan, Milari, and Corvani body types. The smallest available set hung loosely on Alex's frame like an oversized shell. The weapons felt awkward in his hands, balanced for species with different arm lengths and grip strength. "Human cadet," called Sergeant Dex, a battle-scarred Corvani instructor whose voice carried the metallic tone of his cybernetic vocal cords. "Your equipment assignment includes basic survival gear appropriate for your species' limitations. Do not attempt to use advanced systems without supervision." Alex accepted the modified gear without complaint, though he noticed other cadets receiving neural interface headsets, psychic amplifiers, and strength enhancement modules denied to him. His equipment bag contained items the others didn't need: oxygen supplements for alien atmospheres, dietary substitutes for incompatible food sources, and medical supplies for his species' fragile biology. Quarters assignment proved equally challenging. The dormitory levels were designed around alien social structures and physical needs. Vorthan cadets received large chambers with reinforced walls to accommodate their strength training. Milari students lived in connected pods that facilitated group psychic exercises. Corvani recruits occupied tech-integrated spaces with direct, neural access to academy systems. Alex found himself assigned to Sub-Level C, a section originally designed for storage rather than habitation. His room was smaller than the others and lacked the specialized features his classmates enjoyed. The walls were plain metal without the cultural decorations that made other quarters feel welcoming. When he asked about the assignment, a Vorthan administrator simply said that accommodations were made based on anticipated length of stay. The first day of physical training revealed the true scope of Alex's disadvantages. The Academy's fitness program was designed around capabilities that his species simply didn't possess. Running exercises took place on tracks with obstacles scaled for 8-foot Vorthans. Alex's shorter stride meant covering twice the distance to navigate the same course. His human cardiovascular system struggled with the station's artificial atmosphere, optimized for species with different respiratory needs. Strength training proved even more challenging. The lightest weights available exceeded what Alex could lift safely. While Vorthan cadets casually manipulated objects weighing hundreds of pounds, Alex struggled with equipment that other species considered warm-up exercises. Instructors offered no modifications or alternatives. Apparently expecting him to adapt or fail, combat simulation created the most obvious disparities. Alex's human reflexes, evolved for Earth-normal conditions, couldn't match the lightning-fast responses of species that had developed on worlds with different gravity and atmospheric pressure. His strikes, delivered with human strength, barely registered against opponents whose natural armor could deflect plasma bolts. During his first sparring session, Alex faced a young Vorthan named Tor, who approached the match with obvious amusement. The alien's casual backhanded swing sent Alex tumbling across the practice mat before he could react. Tor's laughter echoed through the training bay as he helped Alex to his feet with unnecessary force. "The little human is tougher than expected," Tor announced to the gathering crowd. Most pets would be unconscious after such a gentle tap. The word pet quickly became Alex's unofficial designation among the other cadets. They didn't use it with particular malice, treating it more like an accurate description than an insult. To them, Alex was a curiosity, a living example of what happened when evolution failed to produce viable warriors. Mealtimes reinforced his outsider status. The Academy's Nutrition Center served foods compatible with dozens of alien species. But human dietary requirements were barely considered. Alex ate alone at a corner table, consuming bland nutritional supplements while other cadets enjoyed meals that looked and smelled appealing but would be toxic to human biology. Despite the isolation, Alex began to notice things that others missed. The Vorthan cadets relied heavily on their natural strength, using brute force solutions for problems that might have other answers. When strength failed them, they seemed genuinely confused rather than adaptive. Their cultural conditioning had never required them to think beyond physical power. The Malari students faced different limitations. Their psychic abilities made them formidable in group exercises, but individual challenges revealed their dependence on mental coordination with others. When isolated from their psychic network, they struggled with decision-making and creative problem-solving. They had evolved to think collectively rather than independently. Corvani recruits possessed incredible technical capabilities through their neural interfaces, but their integration with Academy systems created unexpected blind spots. They processed information faster than any organic brain could match, but their thinking followed predictable algorithmic patterns. They excelled at solving known problems but struggled when faced with completely new challenges. Alex's human background had provided him with something his classmates lacked: experience with limitations. On New Geneva Colony, resource scarcity and equipment failures were daily realities. Humans had learned to improvise, adapt, and find solutions using whatever materials were available. They couldn't rely on superior strength, psychic coordination, or advanced technology to solve every problem. Late at night, while other cadets rested in their comfortable quarters, Alex studied in his cramped basement room. He memorized Academy manuals that his classmates never bothered reading, assuming their natural abilities would carry them through. He analyzed tactical scenarios from angles that hadn't occurred to species with more obvious advantages. Slowly, Alex began to understand that his weakness might also be his strength. Humans were the only species represented at the Academy that had evolved from prey animals. Every other race had developed as predators or dominant life forms on their worlds. They had never needed to learn the survival skills that desperate circumstances required, but Alex's ancestors had survived by being clever rather than strong, fast rather than powerful, and persistent rather than naturally gifted. Those same traits might work in an environment designed to favor entirely different evolutionary advantages. The question was whether he could discover how to use them before the Academy's challenges overwhelmed his human limitations entirely. 3 months into his training at the Academy, Alex had stopped finishing last in every exercise. The improvement wasn't dramatic enough to impress his instructors, but careful observers might have noticed that the human cadet was adapting in ways that defied their expectations about his species limitations. The breakthrough came during a particularly challenging combat simulation, designed to test tactical thinking under pressure. The scenario placed cadet teams on a hostile moon with limited resources and tasked them with capturing a fortified enemy position. Most teams approached the problem with predictable strategies based on their species' natural advantages. The Vorthan squads planned direct frontal assaults, relying on their superior strength and armor to overwhelm defensive positions. Their tactical discussions centered around the most efficient ways to break through enemy barriers using brute force. They calculated weapons requirements and assault timing with military precision, but their solutions always involved meeting force with greater force. Malari teams focused on psychic coordination and mental warfare techniques. They planned to use their telepathic abilities to confuse enemy defenders while coordinating complex multi-pronged attacks. Their strategies emphasized psychological pressure and coordinated mental assaults that would break enemy morale before physical contact became necessary. Corvani groups developed highly technical approaches involving advanced surveillance systems and precision strikes. They designed elaborate electronic warfare campaigns to disable enemy technology while using their superior cybernetic capabilities to control the battlefield. Through information dominance, Alex studied the same scenario from his basement quarters. But his analysis took a completely different direction. While other cadets focused on overcoming the enemy's defenses, he examined the environment itself for opportunities that didn't require superior firepower or advanced technology. The simulated moon's geography included unstable cliff formations above the enemy position. Seismic surveys mentioned in the briefing materials indicated recent tectonic activity in the region. Weather patterns showed seasonal storms that created powerful electromagnetic interference. None of the alien teams had paid attention to these environmental factors, dismissing them as background information rather than tactical resources. When the simulation began, Alex's mixed species team moved differently than the others. Instead of advancing directly toward the enemy position, they spent valuable time studying the terrain and atmospheric conditions. To outside observers, their approach looked like hesitation or poor leadership. Other teams had already engaged the enemy while Alex's group remained in the starting zone. His teammates initially questioned the strategy. Nira, a young Malari whose psychic abilities made her valuable for reconnaissance, expressed frustration with their apparent inaction. The other teams are already fighting while we examine rocks and weather data. They will claim victory before we even reach the battlefield. Bolt, a Kovani engineer whose cybernetic implants could interface with any Academy technology, ran continuous calculations that showed their chances of success decreasing with each passing minute. Human Alex, our probability of completing the mission drops by 7% every minute we delay engagement. Standard tactical doctrine requires immediate advancement toward the objective. But Alex had learned something important about his alien teammates during their previous exercises together. Despite their natural advantages, they had begun to trust his unconventional thinking because it consistently produced unexpected results. His human perspective revealed possibilities that their more linear thought processes missed. "Trust me," Alex said, pointing to his portable display showing the cliff formations. "We're not avoiding the fight. We're choosing when and how it happens." His plan required precise timing and careful coordination of environmental factors that most species would never consider using as weapons. The enemy position sat directly beneath ancient rock formations that geological surveys indicated were ready to collapse with the right kind of pressure applied at specific structural points, while other teams engaged in costly frontal assaults. Against heavily defended positions, Alex's group moved to carefully calculated locations around the target area. They weren't attacking the enemy directly, but rather preparing to use the moon's own geology against the defenders. The seasonal storm that Alex had identified in the weather data arrived exactly when his calculations predicted. The electromagnetic interference it created disrupted communications and sensors for both attacking and defending forces. But Alex had prepared his team for the blackout period by establishing backup coordination methods that didn't rely on technology. As the storm reached its peak intensity, Alex triggered the collapse he had orchestrated. The explosions his team placed weren't large enough to damage the enemy position directly, but they were perfectly positioned to destabilize the already weakening cliff structure above the fortification. The resulting avalanche eliminated 60% of the enemy force without a single shot being fired. The remaining defenders, demoralized and cut off from their support systems by the electromagnetic storm, surrendered when Alex's team finally approached their position. The simulation ended with Alex's team achieving complete mission success, while suffering 0 casualties. The other teams, despite their superior firepower and advanced capabilities, had fought costly battles that left them weakened even in victory. Instructor Dex reviewed the exercise results with obvious confusion. His cybernetic analysis systems had recorded every detail of the simulation, but the data made no sense according to established tactical doctrine. A team led by a human had achieved better results than squads comprised of naturally superior warriors. Cadet Alex, Instructor Dex called during the post-exercise briefing. "Explain your tactical approach." Alex stood before the assembled groups, aware that dozens of alien eyes were watching him with new attention. The mockery and dismissal he had grown accustomed to had been replaced by genuine curiosity and, in some cases, grudging respect. "Most species think about overcoming obstacles," Alex explained. Humans learned to think about using obstacles. On Earth, our ancestors survived by turning environmental challenges into advantages rather than fighting against them directly. The instructor's cybernetic implants processed this explanation rapidly. You used the terrain as a weapon system rather than treating it as a battlefield obstacle? Exactly, Alex confirmed. The enemy position was strong against direct assault, but vulnerable to geological instability. The storm provided cover and confusion. By combining these factors at the right moment, we achieved tactical superiority without needing superior firepower. Nira, his Malari teammate, shared her observations through the psychic link that connected her with other members of her species. The human's mind works differently than ours. Where we see separate elements, he sees connections and possibilities that hadn't occurred to us. Bolt's technical analysis reached similar conclusions. Human Alex demonstrated pattern recognition, capabilities that our cybernetic systems failed to identify. His approach integrated multiple data sources in ways that produced emergent tactical advantages. Word of the exercise results spread quickly through the academy. Alex's success couldn't be dismissed as luck or accident because the simulation required too much precise planning and coordination. Other cadets began paying attention to his training methods, initially out of curiosity but gradually with genuine interest in learning from his approach. The human who had arrived as entertainment for his classmates was slowly becoming something none of them had expected, a teacher. His methods were strange and often counterintuitive, but they consistently produced results that traditional approaches couldn't match. More importantly, Alex's success began changing how his alien classmates viewed not just him, but the fundamental assumptions they had made about strength, superiority, and what it meant to be a warrior. The soft species was proving that evolution had given them something that raw power and advanced technology couldn't replace: the ability to find solutions where others saw only problems. As Alex returned to his basement quarters that night, he realized that the Academy's greatest lesson wasn't what they intended to teach him. Instead, he was discovering that his human heritage provided tactical advantages that no other species possessed, advantages that could turn perceived weakness into unexpected strength. By the 4th month of training, Alex Reed had become something unprecedented at the Galactic Defense Academy, a human cadet who other species actively sought as a teammate. His tactical innovations during the cliff collapse simulation had spread throughout the student body, creating a reputation that transcended the Academy's traditional species hierarchies. The transformation wasn't immediately obvious from his physical performance scores, which remained mediocre compared to naturally superior alien capabilities. Alex still couldn't lift Vorthan weights, match Malari's psychic coordination, or interface with Corvani technology at superhuman speeds. But his approach to problem-solving had begun influencing how other cadets viewed their own training. Nira, the young Malari who had served on his simulation team, found herself questioning assumptions her species had held for generations. During psychic coordination exercises, she began incorporating Alex's environmental awareness techniques into her telepathic reconnaissance. Instead of focusing solely on enemy mines, she learned to scan for geological instabilities, weather patterns, and other factors that human thinking had taught her to consider as tactical resources. "Your mind works in spirals rather than straight lines," she told Alex during one of their study sessions. Malari consciousness moves from thought to thought in logical progressions, but human thinking connects ideas that seem unrelated until you reveal the pattern. Bolt, the Corvani engineer, had begun modifying his cybernetic analysis programs to include variables that Alex's organic brain naturally considered. His technological superiority remained unchanged, but he was learning to ask different questions of his data systems. Environmental factors, historical precedents, and psychological elements that Corvani logic traditionally dismissed as irrelevant were proving to have significant tactical value when viewed through human perspective. "My neural implants can process more information than your organic brain," Bolt acknowledged during a technical systems review, "but you see connections in that information that my cybernetic logic fails to identify." Human pattern recognition, operates through different mechanisms than our digital analysis. The Academy's instructors noticed the shift in cadet behavior with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. Some viewed Alex's influence as a dangerous departure from proven military doctrine, while others recognized that his methods consistently produced superior results in simulated combat scenarios. Instructor Dex, whose cybernetic analysis systems had recorded every detail of Alex's tactical innovations, found himself revising fundamental assumptions about effective leadership and strategic thinking. The Academy's curriculum emphasized the natural advantages that each species brought to military service, but Alex's success suggested that limitations could be as valuable as strengths when properly understood and applied. The real test of Alex's growing reputation came with the announcement of War Games, the Academy's most prestigious competitive event. Teams of mixed-species cadets would engage in complex scenarios that tested every aspect of their training over the course of a full week. The winning team earned recognition that often determined their post-graduation assignments to elite units. Throughout the galaxy, Alex's team drew immediate attention for its unusual composition. Instead of the traditional powerhouse combinations that typically dominated war games, his group consisted of cadets who had been considered secondary choices by other team leaders. Nira's psychic abilities were still developing, lacking the refined control of her more advanced classmates. Bolt's technical skills were impressive, but his combat experience was limited. The team's other members included a young Vorthan named Kren, who was smaller than typical for his species, and Zara, an Altarian cadet whose genetic enhancements had failed to meet expected standards. Other teams looked at Alex's roster with amusement rather than concern. Team leaders who had been competing for the strongest Vorthan warriors, most gifted Malari telepaths, and most advanced Corvani technicians couldn't understand why anyone would choose apparently inferior alternatives. The human has finally revealed his limitations, commented Tor, the massive Vorthan who led the tournament's most favored team. Effective leadership requires recognizing superior capabilities, not collecting specimens from inferior genetic pools. But Alex's selection process had followed entirely different criteria than his competitors understood. Instead of choosing teammates based on raw capabilities, he had identified individuals whose thinking patterns complemented his own analytical approach. Each member of his team brought unique perspectives that traditional military doctrine undervalued, but that Alex recognized as tactically significant. Kren's smaller size among Vorthans had forced him to develop fighting techniques that emphasized speed and precision over brute strength. His approach to combat problems more closely resembled human tactical thinking than typical Vorthan methods. Zara's failed genetic enhancements had taught her to compensate through creative application of limited abilities, making her naturally adaptive in ways that successfully enhanced individuals often weren't. The war games began with a scenario that seemed designed to favor traditional team compositions. The exercise placed competing teams on a contested planet with the mission of establishing and defending territorial control while simultaneously disrupting enemy operations. Success required a combination of direct combat capability, technological superiority, and psychic coordination that typically rewarded teams with the strongest natural advantages. Alex's team started the exercise by doing something that confused observers and frustrated their competitors. They disappeared, while other teams immediately began establishing defensive positions and launching attacks against enemy holdings. Alex's group seemed to vanish from the battlefield entirely. For the first 2 days of war games, monitoring systems could barely track Alex's team movements. They avoided direct engagement with enemy forces, ignored strategic resource points that other teams fought over desperately, and appeared to be accomplishing none of the mission objectives that determined tournament scoring. The humans team has effectively eliminated itself from competition, observed Admiral Cross during a briefing for Academy leadership. Their avoidance of engagement suggests tactical incompetence rather than innovative strategy. But Alex wasn't avoiding the competition. He was redefining it. While other teams focused on immediate tactical objectives, his group was conducting a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation that mapped enemy capabilities, identified strategic weaknesses, and prepared for a coordinated campaign that would leverage their opponent's own strengths against them on the third day. Alex's strategy revealed itself through a series of precisely timed operations that demonstrated the value of patient preparation over immediate action. Instead of attacking enemy positions directly, his team began manipulating the competitive environment in ways that forced their opponents to fight each other, rather than maintaining focus on territorial objectives. Using Nira's enhanced psychic reconnaissance, they identified communication frequencies and coordination methods that each enemy team employed. Bolt's technical skills allowed them to introduce false information into those systems, creating confusion and misdirection that turned allies into adversaries. Kren's speed-based combat techniques proved perfect for hit-and-run operations that disrupted enemy plans without triggering massive retaliatory responses. By the fourth day, the war games had transformed into chaos that favored Alex's team above all others. Traditional powerhouse teams found themselves fighting battles they hadn't planned for against enemies they hadn't expected. Their superior capabilities became liabilities. When applied to problems that didn't match their operational assumptions, Alex's team moved through the confusion like surgeons rather than warriors, applying precise pressure at critical points that amplified the disorder they had created. They captured objectives that other teams had abandoned, secured resources that competitors had overlooked, and established defensive positions in areas that traditional military doctrine considered tactically insignificant but that Alex's analysis had identified as strategically crucial. The final day of war games ended with Alex's supposedly inferior team controlling more territory, securing more resources, and achieving more mission objectives than any other group in the competition. Their victory wasn't just decisive. It was overwhelming in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about military effectiveness. As Academy leadership reviewed the exercise results, they faced a disturbing possibility. The human cadet who had been admitted as a joke might be the most tactically gifted student the Academy had ever trained. The final month of Academy training traditionally culminated in individual combat trials that determined each cadet's graduation ranking and future assignment within the Galactic Defense Force. For 6 months, Alex Reed had defied every expectation about human limitations, but the combat trials represented his greatest challenge yet. Single combat against the Academy's most elite cadets with no opportunity for the tactical innovations that had made him famous. Admiral Cross announced the trial pairings during a ceremony attended by the entire Academy population. The massive Vorthan's expression remained carefully neutral as he read the assignments, but internal communications among Academy leadership revealed their continued uncertainty about how to handle the human cadet who had transformed from entertainment into their highest achieving student. Combat trials will test individual capability without the tactical advantages that team operations provide. The Admiral explained to the assembled cadets, success requires personal excellence rather than innovative strategy. Alex's opponent was inevitable from the moment pairings were announced. Tor, the massive Vorthan cadet who had dominated individual combat training since his arrival at the Academy. Standing nearly 9 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and natural armor that could deflect plasma bolts, Tor represented everything that human physiology lacked. His combat record showed no defeats in over 2 years of Academy training. The announcement drew murmurs of excitement from alien cadets who expected to witness the humans' first definitive failure. Even Alex's closest allies struggled to imagine how human limitations could overcome such overwhelming physical disadvantages in direct combat without environmental factors to exploit or technological resources to manipulate. This trial will be different, Nero warned Alex during their final training session together. Tor's advantages aren't strategic problems that can be solved through creative thinking. His strength, speed, and natural defenses represent absolute physical superiority. Bolt's cybernetic analysis reached similar conclusions. My calculations show probability of human victory approaching 0. Tor's capabilities exceed yours in every measurable category relevant to individual combat. But Alex had spent the final month preparing for exactly this challenge. While other cadets focused on last-minute skill refinement, he had been studying something that his alien classmates couldn't understand: the psychological patterns that governed how naturally superior beings approached combat against apparently inferior opponents. Tor's fighting style reflected his entire species' approach to warfare. Vorthons had evolved as apex predators on a world where physical dominance determined survival. Their combat techniques emphasized overwhelming force applied through direct confrontation. They had never needed to develop subtle tactics because their natural advantages made such approaches unnecessary. Alex had watched Tor fight dozens of opponents during their academy training, carefully analyzing not just his techniques but his mental approach to combat. The massive Vorthon relied on intimidation as much as physical capability, expecting opponents to be psychologically defeated before actual fighting began. His victories came quickly because few beings could maintain fighting spirit when facing such obvious disadvantages. The combat trial took place in the Academy's main arena, a circular space designed to accommodate spectators from across the galaxy. Thousands of beings watched from elevated seating as Alex and Tor entered opposite sides of the arena floor. The size difference between them drew gasps from spectators, who had never seen such a mismatched pairing. Alex carried standard Academy weapons scaled for human physiology, a plasma rifle with limited charge capacity and a vibroblade designed for his smaller frame. His armor was the lightest available, offering minimal protection compared to the reinforced suits that larger species required. Against Tor's massive warhammer and full battle armor, Alex's equipment looked like toys. "Begin combat trial, Admiral," Cross announced, his voice echoing through the arena's acoustic systems. Tor's opening attack demonstrated why he had never lost an Academy combat trial. His forearms moved in coordinated patterns that would have overwhelmed most opponents within seconds. The warhammer whistled through air where Alex's head had been moments before, its impact creating crater-sized damage in the arena floor, but Alex wasn't where the hammer struck. His months of studying Tor's fighting patterns had revealed something that no previous opponent had noticed. The massive Vorthon telegraphed his attacks through subtle shifts in stance and grip that preceded each swing by milliseconds. Those tiny warning signs were invisible to beings focused on Tor's overwhelming power, but Alex had learned to read them like written instructions. The combat that followed defied every expectation held by the watching crowd. Instead of the quick, brutal victory that Tor's record suggested, the fight stretched on as Alex avoided attack after attack through precise timing and positioning that kept him constantly just beyond his opponent's reach. Tor's frustration grew with each missed swing. His species' combat philosophy provided no training for dealing with opponents who refused to engage directly. Every Vorthon warrior expected enemies to meet strength with strength, trading blows until superior power determined the winner. Alex's evasive tactics violated fundamental assumptions about how honorable combat should proceed. "Stand and fight," Tor bellowed, his forearms swinging the massive hammer in increasingly wild patterns. "Stop running like prey," but Alex wasn't running. He was hunting. Each evasion taught him more about Tor's timing and coordination. The Vorthon's forearms created complex attack patterns, but they also required precise coordination that became more difficult as fatigue and frustration accumulated. Alex was studying his opponent's weaknesses while forcing Tor to exhaust his physical advantages through increasingly desperate attempts to land decisive blows. 20 minutes into the combat trial, something unprecedented happened. Tor began showing signs of fatigue. His massive frame required enormous energy to maintain the constant attacks that his fighting style demanded. The Academy's artificial gravity and atmospheric conditions, perfectly calibrated for his species, still couldn't eliminate the metabolic costs of sustained high-intensity combat. Alex had trained specifically for extended combat scenarios, knowing that his human endurance advantages might eventually overcome Tor's overwhelming power if the fight lasted long enough. While Vorthons excelled at brief, intense confrontations, humans had evolved for persistence, hunting that could continue for hours when necessary. The arena crowd watched in stunned silence as the dynamics slowly shifted. Tor's attacks remained devastatingly powerful, but they came more slowly and with less precision as his energy reserves depleted. Alex's evasions required far less energy expenditure, allowing him to maintain consistent performance while his opponent gradually declined. When Tor finally stumbled, leaving himself momentarily vulnerable for the first time in the entire fight, Alex made his move. Instead of attempting to deliver a killing blow that his human strength couldn't achieve against Vorthan armor, he used Tor's own momentum against him through a leverage technique that sent the massive warrior crashing to the arena floor. Alex stood over his fallen opponent with his vibroblade positioned at Tor's throat, where even Vorthan natural armor couldn't provide complete protection. The arena fell silent as thousands of alien spectators processed what they had witnessed. A human cadet had defeated the Academy's most dominant individual combatant. But instead of claiming victory through the traditional killing stroke, Alex extended his hand to help Tor to his feet. The gesture shocked the watching crowd almost as much as the combat outcome had, violating expectations about how victorious warriors should behave toward defeated enemies. "You fought with honor," Alex said, his words carrying clearly through the arena's silence. "Your strength is impressive, but endurance won this battle." Tor accepted the offered assistance, his expression showing confusion and grudging respect in equal measure. No opponent had ever helped him stand after a fight, and none had explained their victory in terms that acknowledged his capabilities rather than diminishing them. Admiral Cross descended to the arena floor, his massive frame moving with careful dignity as he approached the two cadets. The Academy's graduation ceremony required formal recognition of combat trial results, but no precedent existed for how to handle a human victory over what the Academy considered its most elite cadet. "Cadet Alex Reed," the Admiral announced, his voice carrying throughout the arena, "you have achieved something that our records indicate has never occurred in Academy history. A Category C species has defeated a Category A warrior in individual combat." The Admiral paused, his scarred features showing internal conflict as he processed the implications of what had happened. "I brought you to this academy as entertainment for our real cadets. I believed your failure would reinforce the importance of genetic superiority and natural advantages in military service." Admiral Cross drew his ceremonial sword, a weapon that had been used to recognize exceptional achievement for over 3 centuries. "Instead, you have demonstrated that victory comes not from the gifts that evolution provides, but from how we choose to use whatever capabilities we possess." The blade touched Alex's shoulders as the Admiral continued the ancient ritual. "You graduate at the top of your class with the highest honors this academy can bestow. More importantly, you have taught us that strength is not always what it appears to be." As Alex accepted his commission as a Galactic Defense Force officer, the arena erupted in applause from alien cadets who had learned to respect the human who refused to accept limitations as excuses for failure. The Academy's records would show that for the first time in its 3-century history, a member of the soft species had proven that sometimes the greatest weapon is the refusal to surrender when victory seems impossible. Throughout the galaxy, military commanders would soon request human officers for their units, not because humans were stronger or faster or more naturally gifted than other species, but because they had learned something that genetic superiority couldn't teach: how to win when winning should be impossible.